Welcome to today's episode of the Deep Dive Credit Podcast, presented by Elite Credit Solutions. We are your trusted partner in affordable credit repair, proudly based in Tampa, Florida, and dedicated to serving clients across the entire United States. Join us as we explore the intricacies of credit management, share expert insights, and empower you with the knowledge you need to achieve your financial goals. Get ready for an enlightening journey into the world of credit. Let's dive in.
Hey everyone, so debt settlement, huh? Trying to figure out if it's the right move for you.
Yeah, it can be a real head scratcher, especially with all the information out there.
It's like you're drowning in credit card bills or medical debt, and you just want it all to go away.
Right. And you're probably seeing a ton of articles and advice, some good, some maybe not so much.
Exactly. That's why we're doing this deep dive to help cut through all that noise.
We'll help you figure out if debt settlement is actually the right path for you, specifically for you and your situation.
And we've got some awesome sources to help us do just that.
Oh, yeah. We've got incharge.org. They've got some great practical advice.
And then there's Bankrate and NerdWallet.
They always have some really insightful financial analysis, don't they?
Totally. And of course, we can't forget about those credit score gurus over at Experian.
Oh, and those warnings from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, always good to keep those in mind.
Right. We want to make sure we're looking at this from all sides.
Definitely a mixed bag, which is what we want.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What exactly is debt settlement?
Well, imagine you're sitting down with your credit card company.
Oh, that sounds fun already.
Instead of making those monthly payments that are just killing you, the ones you can barely afford,
Been there.
you negotiate to pay a smaller amount overall.
Wait, really? You can do that?
Yeah, you can either do it in one lump sum or with a lower interest rate.
Sounds tempting.
Oh, it definitely can feel like a breath of fresh air, especially when you're feeling buried under all that debt.
Right, like a lifeline.
Exactly. But, and this is a big but,
Uh-oh, there's always a but.
you really got to understand how debt settlement works, the nuts and bolts of it and the risks involved.
Okay, so let's say you've thought about it, and you're like, all right, debt settlement, I'm going to check it out. What are your options?
Well, you can go the DIY route where you handle all the negotiations yourself directly with your creditors.
Ooh, I like the sound of being in control.
Yeah, it can be empowering, but, and there's another but,
Hit me with it.
it takes some serious negotiation skills, and let's be honest, who has a ton of free time these days?
Right, that's like a full-time job in itself.
It can be. So your other option is to bring in a debt settlement company.
So they do all the dirty work for you.
Exactly. They handle all those tough negotiations, but remember, they're a business.
Of course, got to make money somehow.
Right, so they're going to charge fees, usually a percentage of the debt they manage to settle for you.
Okay, makes sense. But how much are we talking here?
Well, sometimes those fees can be pretty hefty. I was looking at this study by the American Fair Credit Council.
Those guys are like the debt settlement experts, right?
Totally. And they found that people who use these companies ended up paying, on average, about 50% of their original debt.
Wait, 50%? That doesn't sound too bad.
It doesn't, right. At first, it's like, woohoo, I saved a ton of money. But hold on, there's more to this story.
Oh no, here we go again with the butts?
You got to factor in those fees. So let's say, for example, you settle a debt of like $4,262 for $2,115.
Okay, I'm following. So I just saved over $2,000. Sweet.
You would think. But then the company's like, okay, our fee is $829.
Ouch. Suddenly that saving isn't looking so impressive.
Exactly. It's a big chunk of change.
So you really got to weigh that cost against the convenience of not having to haggle with those creditors yourself.
For sure. But even if you're okay with the fees, there's this whole other side to debt settlement that we haven't even touched on yet.
Oh boy, what's the catch?
We call it the dark side of debt settlement.
Ooh, that sounds ominous.
It can be. This is where those warnings from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau come in.
Yeah, those guys are serious business.
They are, and for good reason. Debt settlement can have some pretty serious consequences, especially for your credit score.
Oh, credit scores.
Yeah.
Everyone's always talking about those.
Right, they're a big deal. So imagine you're finally starting to feel like you're getting a handle on your debt, breathing a little easier.
Like you're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly. And then, bam, your credit score takes a nosedive, like 100-point drop, maybe even more.
Wait, 100 points. That's huge.
It is. I know a good credit score is super important for things like buying a house or a car.
Or even renting an apartment these days.
You got it. But how long does that kind of damage actually stick around? So yeah, 100-point drop can really stick with you.
For like How long are we talking?
It could be on your credit report for up to 7 years.
7 years? That's crazy.
It is. It makes it way harder to get approved for loans. Even renting an apartment could be tough.
Wow. I had no idea it was that bad.
Yeah, and that's not all.
There's more. Come on.
Remember how the IRS sees things?
Oh no, not taxes too.
I'm afraid so. The IRS, they look at forgiven debt as income.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah. So if you settle a debt for less than what you owe, guess what?
I don't even want to know.
They could hit you with a tax bill, and not a small one either.
Ugh, that's like adding insult to injury.
It really is. You could end up with a damaged credit score A and D, a huge tax bill. Not fun.
Definitely not the outcome I was hoping for.
Right. So we've talked about the credit score impact and those potential tax issues, but there's more to consider.
Of course there is. I should have known better than to think it was that simple.
Well, there are those fees we mentioned earlier, and don't forget about interest charges.
Yeah, interest. This stuff just keeps piling up.
It does, and it can really add up while you're not making those regular payments.
So even if you settle for less, you could end up losing all those savings to interest.
Exactly. It's like 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Okay. And we can't forget about those shady debt settlement companies.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, there are some bad apples in the industry.
Makes sense. Where there's money involved, there are always going to be people trying to take advantage.
Sadly, it's true. You got to be super careful about who you choose to work with.
So let's say I'm listening to all this and feeling a bit overwhelmed. Debt settlement seems risky, but I really need some relief.
I hear you. It's a lot to take in, but before you give up hope, remember there are other options.
Really? Like what?
Well, remember those alternatives we mentioned earlier?
You mean debt consolidation loans and balance transfer credit cards?
Those are definitely worth exploring. And don't forget about debt management programs.
Right, those are starting to sound pretty good right about now. Like a safer bet, maybe?
They could be. They each come with their own pros and cons, of course.
Well, we've got to explore those more, but before we do, I think we need to figure out if debt settlement is even a possibility for someone.
Good point. Not everyone qualifies,
So what are some of the things someone should be thinking about before even considering debt settlement?
That's a great question, and that's exactly what we're going to dive into right after the break.
Okay, so debt settlement, yeah, we've covered the good, the bad, the ugly, but it's not the only way to deal with debt, right?
No, not at all. There are other options out there, and they might be a much better fit for some people.
Okay, so let's go back to those debt consolidation loans. What are they all about?
All right, so picture this. You've got a bunch of credit cards, maybe some medical bills, maybe even a personal loan.
Oh, yeah, I know the feeling.
And they all have different interest rates, different due dates. It's a mess.
A total juggling act.
Exactly. That's where a debt consolidation loan comes in. You basically take out one new loan, hopefully with a lower interest rate.
Okay, so I'm combining all those debts into one.
Yep. And you use that new loan to pay off all those other debts. So instead of juggling a bunch of payments every month,
I'm just making one payment, and hopefully it's lower than all the others combined.
exactly. It simplifies everything, makes it much easier to manage.
That sounds pretty good.
It can be. And if you can snag a lower interest rate on that consolidation loan, well, you could end up saving some serious money over time.
I like the sound of that. But there's got to be a catch, right?
Yeah, you got to be careful, It's tempting to think of a debt consolidation loan as this magic solution.
Like it just makes all the debt disappear.
Yeah, but if you haven't changed your spending habits, if you haven't figured out what got you into debt in the first place,
You could end up right back where you started.
exactly, you could even end up in worse shape.
So it's more than just moving debt around. It's about getting your finances in order, too.
Right. Debt consolidation can be a great tool, but you got to use it responsibly.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, what about those balance transfer credit cards? Are they worth looking into?
Yes, the 0% APR offers,
Yeah.
always tempting.
Super
Yeah.
tempting. But I'm always a bit wary of those.
I get it, but they can be a fantastic way to save on interest, especially if you're disciplined.
Discipline how?
You got to be able to pay off that balance during that introductory period, before those regular rates kick in.
Right, because those 0% offers don't last forever.
Nope. That's the danger zone. You miss that deadline and bam, you're hit with those sky-high interest rates.
And suddenly you're in worse shape than before.
Exactly. So it's crucial to read that fine print, understand all the terms of the offer.
So how long does that 0% period last? What's the interest rate after that? Any fees? Lots to think about.
Yep. It's not just about jumping at the first shiny offer you see. You got to have a plan to pay it off before those higher rates hit.
Okay, so balance transfer cards, they can be great, but you got to be smart about it.
Absolutely. Now, another option you might want to consider is a debt management program.
Yeah, we touched on those earlier. What's the deal with those?
So they involve working with a credit counseling agency, a nonprofit one.
Okay, and what do they do?
Think of them as your financial coach, your guide through this whole debt mess.
Someone to hold your hand.
Kind of. They help you create a budget. They negotiate with your creditors. They basically help you get back on track.
So instead of going it alone, you've got a professional in your corner.
Exactly. And that negotiation piece can be huge. They can sometimes get late fees waived or interest rates reduced.
That's awesome. Sounds like a good deal.
It can be. Now, typically with these programs, they consolidate your debts and you make one monthly payment to the agency.
And they pay all my creditors.
Yep. You're still responsible for repaying the full amount, but you have that support system, that guidance.
I could see that being really helpful for some people, that structure.
It can make a world of difference. But what about the situations where the debt just feels insurmountable?
Yeah, like you just don't see a way out.
That's where bankruptcy comes in, often seen as the last resort.
Yeah, it's a big decision, a scary one for a lot of people.
It is. Definitely not something to take lightly, but it can be the best option in some cases.
Like if you have a ton of debt and not a lot of assets.
Exactly. And there are different types of bankruptcy, so it's important to talk to an attorney, figure out what's right for you.
But it's not a magic solution either, right?
Nope. It comes with its own consequences, like a big hit to your credit score.
Yeah, that's a tough one to recover from.
It can be.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's the only way to get a fresh start, to wipe the slate clean.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of options here. Debt consolidation loans, balance transfer cards, debt management programs, and even bankruptcy.
It's a lot to process. But the key takeaway is that you have options. You're not stuck.
Right. Debt settlement might be right for some people, but it's definitely not the only solution.
And even if it seems like the right path for you, remember those questions we talked about earlier?
About whether you can afford it, the impact on your credit score, and if your creditors will even work with you.
Those are super important things to consider. And don't forget, if you're feeling lost or just need some help, reach out to a financial advisor or a credit counselor.
They can help you figure out the best path forward.
Absolutely. They're there to help you navigate this stuff.
Because at the end of the day, it's about finding what works best for you, your unique situation.
You got it. And the more you know about your options, the more confident you'll be in making the right decision.
So true. Well, that's it for our deep dive into the world of debt settlement and beyond. We've covered a lot of ground, and hopefully you're feeling a bit more empowered to tackle those financial challenges.
You've totally got this.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning and stay informed.
That wraps up another insightful episode of the Deep Dive Credit Podcast, brought to you by Elite Credit Solutions, your go-to resource for affordable credit repair across the United States. We appreciate you joining us today, and we hope you found the information valuable and empowering. If you're ready to take control of your financial future, don't hesitate to reach out to us at 813-317-6776. Additionally, don't forget to like today's podcast, follow us, or subscribe to stay in tune with future updates. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep striving for excellence in your credit journey.